Okay, we're live, Chair.
Thank you very much. So, welcome everybody to the first meeting of the Cabinet Asset Management and Markets Working Party, as it is now called, and which is obviously an amalgamation of the old Corporate Assets Facilities Management Working Group and the Cabinet Markets Working Party. So I think we've got two new councillors. She's Councillor Durrans and Councillor Wood. No,
Councillor Wood's not present, Chair.
Okay, so in that case, do we have are there apologies from Councillor Wood?
No, Chair, have no apologies and no substitutes being identified to me.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, so the next item for me to mention is to remind members of the need to disclose any disclosable pecuniary interests or other interests they may have in relation to the items included on this agenda. Councillor Blackborough.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Just to declare that I'm a co-chair of the Brighouse Town Deal Boards, where we're due to have a brand new market, so that might have some bearing. And I'm equally director of the Brighouse bid, but I don't think that has I think it's more than the Brighouse Town Deal Boards that needs to declare. Okay,
thank you. And of course, I'm also on the Todmorden Town Deal Board, although that's not really as relevant to this. So the market only comes into it tangentially. No other. Alan? You seem to have a hand up. No. I don't know what it is. Okay.
Sorry, Chair, that was my pensive look.
Oh, well, no, I've got a little white hand on your screen.
All right. I don't know. Apologies. Is it still there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway. Right. Okay. Now, we've got two sets of minutes from the Cabinet's Market Working Party on the 31st of January and the CAFM Asset Management Board on the 7th of March.
Sorry to interrupt you, Chair. You haven't done admission of the public.
Sorry, yeah.
That's all right.
Yeah, so it's not recommended that the public be excluded from the meeting for the consideration of the items of business on this agenda. Okay, so does anybody have any matters they want to raise in relation to those two sets of minutes for anybody who was there? No, I think I just wanted to say that I was a bit surprised. I know sometimes attendance is a bit thin, but I was a bit surprised that there were only two of us at the CAFM board. That must be right though. And it also, in the minutes from that meeting on the 7th of March, it said that the minutes from the December meeting would be deferred to today. So they're not mentioned there, so I don't know whether they're still to be signed off as well.
My apologies, Chair. They should be on the agenda if that's the case from the last meeting. I will check into that and make sure they come to the next one.
Thank you. And the other thing that I wanted to, well, there was one thing that did arise from a comment in the markets meeting where I think it was councillor or somebody suggested that it would be more helpful if we had an indication of all of the costs related to running of the markets, and it was suggested that this wasn't necessarily particularly helpful. But in fact, now we've merged the two boards. People who are interested in that will get the opportunity to see all of it anyway. And the other point I noticed was that in relation to the markets group, it was suggested that we would want to be meeting in person and possibly have visits to some of the markets. And obviously there's big changes going on. So I can see that would be something that maybe we consider as things. It's hard to say at the moment because we don't know what's going to happen when exactly. But as things move on, I think it will perhaps be nice to see, say, what happens to Brighouse. And we can look at that. But I don't think it's worth putting it into the work programme at the moment because we just don't know when it is. Does anybody else have any strong views on whether any of the councillors on whether they would like these meetings, the run-of-the-mill meetings, to be in person or to remain online? People would prefer it to remain online, unless Councillor Bradborough.
Yeah, I think it would. It's always helpful to have it online. Actually, I think it's useful to once development takes place, as in the Big House Market later on this year. I think it will be nice to then see development as it progresses. But I can't see that happening until early next year. It is my understanding. Otherwise, you're looking at a very not very rundown markets, otherwise John's going to kill me. But you're looking at a very dilapidated market that needs, we know the work needs to be done, and but it will be later on this year when that takes place. Is my understanding.
Okay, so I think the mood of the meeting is that we remain online except for perhaps special visits. That's fine. Okay, so I think we can then mark both of those sets of minutes as agreed and to be signed by myself. Which takes us on to item 5, which is the CAFM and Markets Revenue / Savings Monitor, the outturn for 22-23 and the outlook for 23-24. And this is, it says on the agenda, oral report, Paul, but in fact you have provided the written reports, and I hope everybody got those by email on Monday.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I would like to apologise, Chair, for the late circulation of the report at a busy time of year, but I'll make sure that doesn't happen. I'll make sure that doesn't happen again. Just generally, just for members perhaps not familiar with the budget for CAFM, it's fairly unique in that CAFM are responsible for the servicing and buildings control budget. So all of the building budgets for the corporate estate and the 300+ buildings, CAFM are responsible for that, in addition to the normal service control budgets around staffing and everything else. I think it's also worth pointing out that staff within CAFM are also responsible for delivering a number of significant capital schemes, asset review and asset management, and the workforce office strategy capital schemes. Although none of that is featured in the report today, it's just making the point that the service as a whole has a broad remit in comparison to perhaps some of the other service. The appendix detailed in the report shows the outturn position for 22-3 and the budget for 23-4. In terms of the overall budget, as probably members of the working party will understand, energy costs and repairs are two of the budgets that feature highly in the buildings related report, and the service control is largely around staffing and also the requirement to generate the significant levels of investment and non-investment income. So what happened last year is detailed in the report. The budget overspent by 1.342 million, but when you take into account that energy costs account for 1.6 million, the remaining budgets within CAFM actually contributed £300,000 towards the net energy costs, which I think in the current climate, I think that's a really good outcome. In terms of delivering savings in future years, I've mentioned in the report that CAFM have a requirement to achieve £4 million of the savings, in addition to trying to keep costs within budgets detailed in the report. There are a number of challenges, Chair, moving forward. Obviously, I think everyone will appreciate that energy cost inflation is still something that's impacting in all local authorities in England and Wales, and it's no different for us. Material costs and increasing contract price inflation are other things that can impact on the budget. But I think overall, moving forward, Chair, there is the opportunity for the service to achieve a balanced budget position or even contribute some savings. But the overall, it depends on whether the energy price inflation, where that comes in, Chair, and how that impacts on the CAFM budget. We are doing some work with officers at the minute. The working group may recall that the council purchases energy inflation via the YPO framework, and it's not only around the consumption within the council of the buildings, it's around when that energy is purchased by YPO. I know energy costs are coming down quite significantly a minute, but I am aware from speaking to colleagues that the consortium which the council is a member of, along with all other West Yorkshire councils, inflation has been purchased at different points throughout the year, when there was less certainty around where energy inflation was going. So I think the overriding points, Chair, are that overall the service underspent, leaving aside the energy inflation, but that will be one of the challenges that we've got moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Paul? Councillor Blackborough.
Thank you, Chair. It's just in relation to the Brighouse Civic Hall. So I noticed under the service control properties, it's not listed as there. We're still maintaining the building, is my understanding. Does that include within these costs? I know mainly it'll be energy keeping the building, so it's maintenance. You know, we're keeping the maintenance on that. And I also appreciate that, you know, clearly there are plans, you know, to with the Brighouse Civic Hall equally. So it's just really if that's been incorporated within these figures.
If I could come back on that one, Chair. Yes, it is included in the figures. The schedule in the appendix with details to service control properties is not an exclusive list. It's the main areas, but any of the energy costs attached to the buildings which the council owns will form part of the cap and budget and the responsibility for the service to meet those costs.
Okay, any other questions? We're not seeing any. So, and again, Todd College, that presumably will fall out at some point.
Yes, that has fallen out already, Chair, because obviously we've signed the lease and the property's being handed over. So the council may have some responsibility in relation to the service, in relation to the building, but it's very small in relation to the Todmorden College building, which is now the responsibility of the Learning Centre. Yeah.
And the only question I should have asked this long ago, but why does Battington Road appear under market?
I think it's because, I think, John, you may be able to answer this one more than me, but I think it's because I presume, John, that we have some storage or something at Battington Road, is that?
Yeah, we do have a storage facility at Battington Road, which is separate from the rest of the depot.
Right, okay. Right. And yeah, so we've still got inflation. We're still a bit up in the air, probably at recovering from COVID. And in relation to markets anyway, we're still probably not really sure where we're at after COVID, and we've got all these works going on. So it's all still a really uncertain position for markets, isn't it?
That's correct. And I think I detailed in the markets report, Chair, that in the past, the market service and the council has benefited from the money that's been provided by government. So I think I showed the last 4 years financial outturn for the market service, and it shows in the report that in 1 year we had £150,000 worth of funding that essentially offset part of the budget pressures within the service. I think for me, when you look at the markets report, if you look back to 1920 as opposed to last year, you know, the overspend or the budget pressure has come down from 320,000 to 200, which I think, given the current economic climate, the trading activities and issues facing markets generally, John's alluded to this on many occasions, that the market services throughout the country are experiencing the same issues with us. I take
it you meant 2020, not 1920.
Yes, I did. So apologies for that. So yeah, the market service, I think it's well documented, all the issues that's facing the service, and a lot of it revolves around the recruitment and retention of traders, and in particular in relation to the borough market. I think Alan's mentioned at previous meetings, Chair, that the council's making a significant investment in a lot of the markets. If you think in recent years, we've taken back the Brighouse market. We're due to relocate both Brighouse and Elland. We've got all the work going on around the borough market. In the medium and longer term, that's fantastic news for the council, for traders, and for customers throughout the borough. In the meantime, there could be some impact on the service while all this work's being done. And that's what we need to keep our close eye on, Chair, as we look at the budget and monitor the position. My own gut feeling is that the position that we reported for last year, I think it stabilised at that point. I can't guarantee in any shape or form, Chair, that position is going to change significantly. But as you're aware, it is one of the issues. The council's conducting a council-wide base budget review, where we're looking at all kinds of where there are budget pressures without the service, and the issues in relation to markets, which are well documented, will be part of that view that will ultimately be considered by Cabinet.
Okay, thank you. Alan, you put your hand down.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. It was exactly the final point that Mr. Greenwood made there about the corporate rebasing exercise. There are at least two significant inherent budget issues that we have just in relation to the income from markets. We know that demography's changed. We know that the economic climate's changed, and what were realistic income targets from the past have perhaps need review at a point in time. So that will be swept up through the corporate rebasing exercise, and equally the future forecast for energy. As a service, we've prided ourselves on the savings that we've delivered over the last decade, to the tune of between 35 and 40 million pounds over that period, making a significant contribution to the council's balanced budget over that period. So I do get slightly frustrated when we have these significant pressures that we can't manage to the tune of 1.6 million pounds in relation to energy, but nevertheless we have made a dent in that, but that needs more of a kind of a corporate solution going forward. So both of those issues, alongside other issues across other services, will be swept up through the corporate rebasing exercise, which Paul's just made reference to. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Blackburn.
Yeah, so sorry, Chair, and my apologies. I'm just trying to find an appropriate slot to raise the question about the changes, the interim changes to the Brighouse market, and if we can have an update on it. I can't find the appropriate part in the agenda where I could possibly raise that, so I don't know if this will be the appropriate thing in relation to additional costs and things like that, and what pressures the department will be under, and do we have any updates as to where we think the market may be located in Brighouse, for instance?
I think it might as well be raised here. If either Paul or Alan want to say anything about that, or John.
In answer to your question in regards to temporary market facilities, we are still exploring the temporary solutions, because obviously there's a need to come in on budget for the scheme, and so we've not resolved the temporary location yet. We are still exploring other venues. There will, however, be inherent costs on the revenue budget, because whilst the Brighouse New Market is a capital scheme, the continuation of the market is revenue, and therefore there will be an impact, and particularly if occupancy falls during the period between the transition. But we are hoping that over the next month or so, we will have identified where we're going to go as a temporary location. We've several options on the table. One of them options has been dragged out, I'm afraid, so it's made officers a little bit nervous, because time is ticking and we're wanting to start construction in January. So we are working or persevering very heavily on finding a temporary location.
Okay, thank you very much. Is that is there anything else you wanted to follow up on that?
No, I think that's really useful. I was aware that one of the locations had been dropped out. So I think it's just ensuring that we communicate. I'm sure John is and the team with the market traders, because I noticed there was a bit of a downward turn the week when we're on a stall in relation to the number of stall holders. And what we don't want to do is lose those traders, from coming back to Brighouse. So it's just that continuity really, and ensuring that we communicate effectively with the traders and the local people as well. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say on that. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we can rely on John to communicate with traders in any event. Communication with the public's a matter for the wider council, but certainly John will be keeping traders up to date. John?
I'm in constant dialogue with the traders at Brighouse. Obviously, it was me that went and served them notice to quit. But in reference to Councillor Blackborough's comment in regards to downward trend on occupancy, whilst there has been a downward trend on occupancy, the day of the public meeting, unfortunately, 6 of them decided to go and do a temporary event. And so it did look a bit bleak, I'm afraid.
Okay. So they haven't left permanently, they've just gone to another event for that day.
What we're trying to do, Chair, is build future markets around local produce and crafts, particularly at weekends. But what you tend to find with crafters is that they will chase, if they think they can take a little bit more money on an event, they will go to events. And the weekend in question also tied in with Broadfest at the same time. So a few of them pursued that one, which I'm led to believe didn't turn out as well as some people.
Oh, you disappeared there, John. I've never heard of it. What is it?
It's a festival up at the old Broadlands rugby ground.
Right.
Yeah, and they tend to drag a lot of, particularly street food traders, crafters, to their events. But so obviously they go there anticipating that the swell of the crowds will give them more money. But for some, it didn't work out that way, I'm afraid.
Right. Okay. So they should have stayed at Brighouse then. Yeah. Okay. Right. So unless anybody else has got any questions in relation to the finances, then. No. Okay. So thank you, Paul. I don't know if you want to stay for the rest of the meeting or whether we want to escape.
I'll remain if I can, Chair.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. So then we are moving on to item 6, the asset review programme 23-24 Q1 update. Is this going to be you, Stephen? Yeah.
It is, Councillor Dacre, thank you. Just before we start, can I just introduce Siobhan Larney, who's on the call? So Siobhan's our new asset planning manager, recently imposed. So hopefully in future meetings, Siobhan will be taking this item from me. But as Siobhan's sort of quite new into post, then we'll I'll proceed for this time. So usual update that we give at the at what was previously the asset management board meeting with regards to the asset review programme. Whose overarching objective is to ensure we've got efficient, effective, fit for purpose properties. Splits down into 3 main areas. Phase 1, which has now come to a completion, apart from a couple of properties which need to be disposed of, which I'll just go into a bit of detail in a moment. The office accommodation strategy, which is the work that was done over the COVID period to look at reducing our office space in mainly the Halifax area. And then the depots review, which we are just taking a bit of a relook at. So phase 1 and the office accommodation strategy are self-financing using kind of ring fence capital receipts and revenue savings to finance the funding required. So we'll just go into a little bit of detail on the various elements. So as mentioned, phase 1 is officially now completed. We just have a couple of properties there which we've got left to dispose of. Glenholme, we're hoping to put in an auction in October of this year, and then Southgate and Elland is hopefully going to the market, onto the open market through agents in we hopefully September in the early autumn, once the holiday period is over. We've mentioned there in the bullet points the items that the programme has achieved in respect to phase 1. Just one item to note that Lyndhurst was originally included in the phasing of the programme, but there was a change in the service who used the building, South West Yorkshire Health Trust, in terms of they wanted to remain within the building. So that building has now been taken out of the programme. So there may potentially be some deficit in some of the capital that we receive, but we won't know that until we've disposed of the remaining buildings, and we'll be able to look at how that affects potentially the overall programme. Just in respect of the Lyndhurst, the service, we are working with our adult service and the ICB as to how we may look at that service in the future and potential for that particular building. So just moving on to the office accommodation strategy, the 3 main areas at the moment that we're working on is the Halifax Town Hall. We're just currently reviewing the reconfiguration of that, and one of the main components we need to carry out before we can take that much further is the mechanical and electrical surveys that we're having done on the town hall. We're just going out to procure those at the moment. You'll appreciate with the old listed building that it is, there's been many additions and the like to a lot of the services in there, so we're just making sure we've got a complete record of where things are, where the electrics are, and all the various different mechanical elements, so we can work to that through fully. Mulcher House, we have done some original health and safety works there, but we've got some remaining works which are required, which are just being defined at the current time. And then Westgate House, which is on a lease, we have on a lease until September next year, 24. We are in the process of starting the decommissioning of that. We got 2 tenants in there in the vacant space that we have. The ICB, what was the CCG, and also now the NHS are there as well in one of the floors. So we've managed to obtain some income in that period, which will hopefully helps us with the overall programme. So I think just in respect of those, it just mentioned there the 3 ways offices that the council occupied, Carlton Mill and Westgate House. We've vacated all of those. Just with regards to the depots review, I know we've had this on the agenda for quite some time. That we were looking to do an overall review of all our depots, which actually happened for quite some over a period of time. Is quite a few of the depots have been looked at individually for various reasons, the likes of Ainley's depot and Manor Heath. So we're now within the team, Siobhan's actually looking at a new review as to a specification as to what that will include. So we're now likely to include a bit more building specific related to specific service requirements. So hopefully that gives a little bit of a flavour as to where we are on the asset review programme.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Well, first of all, yes, welcome, Siobhan. I'm sure we're all pleased to see you, and I'm sure Steve is particularly pleased that you're there now. But yeah, it'll be lovely to see you in the future. So does anybody have any questions in relation to this? Councillor Blackburn.
My apologies, Chair, you'll be fed up with me. You'll be throwing me off this board for asking all these questions, for all the questions. Two questions. One is if it's possible to provide me with an update in terms of the Brighouse Civic Hall. I know it's an extremely complex case, and you may wish to come back to us at some stage in respect of the report. I understand the report is being produced as we speak, so it may not be appropriate to mention that at this moment in time. That's one of the elements. The other one is where I'm be able to find details of the reconfiguration of the Halifax Town Hall. Do we have some plans in place? Is it going to be more office space? But one plea is wearing my civic hat duty is actually, I'd really like to consider the town hall be more open and more accessible to people being able to display our wonderful, amazing building, designed by Charles Barry, as you know, who designed Westminster and then came to Halifax. At the moment, it feels very closed to the members of the public, and it will be a shame whether we can look at something in relation to a mechanism where you go through the town hall front entrance, you have a mechanism where you need a card. So whether we could look into having a card on the private rooms so that actually members of the public could go into the Victoria Hall and display that and not go anywhere else, if that makes sense. So my apologies for the question being a bit long-winded and comments, but I'm very passionate about opening up these buildings and ensure that actually everyone enjoys our heritage that we've got.
Okay, does anybody want to answer that, Steve?
So can I can come back on possibly both, and Siobhan may want to come back on the town hall because Siobhan has been well and truly engaged in the town hall. Just on Brighouse Civic Hall, Councillor Bradbury, yes, we've actually completed the options report now, and that has gone to finance and our director for initial look at, and then we'll have some discussions with them with regards to that. So we're hopeful, certainly given the holiday period, that we may be able to kind of towards the end of August have a decision in respect of that and be able to report further. Do you want to take the town hall, Siobhan? Is that?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll just make some comments, and then obviously Steve, if you want to jump in and complete anything. I'm glad that you raised that about the accessibility and about making the use of that building, because it is our flagship building and it's absolutely beautiful. And we want to do everything in our power to continue that to be used to its full potential. As part of equality, diversity and inclusion, one of the main things we've been talking about is about the accessibility in the building. So that's one of the real key points and one of the drivers around this project. So just to reassure you, that is a great focus for us. The door system that you're talking about is our Paxton access system. And we've also been talking about that, obviously Victoria Hall, making sure that that could be used to its full potential. We will be looking at the security of the rest of the services that are operating to make it sort of multifunctional for officers as well as the general public. So we will be looking at internal security within the building, making sure that, you know, people can't access areas where we have information governance issues or anything like that. So all those things are considerations for us. As Steve alluded to, we are looking at our M&E surveys first, just to get that real full deep understanding of the building. Due to the history of it and due to the listed building content. And then we will be looking at phased work, which is just in that in the planning stage at the moment, just depending upon what the outcome of these surveys are later on. Steve, is there anything you want to pick up on that?
I think you've dealt with everything there, Siobhan. Very well, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Durrance.
Thank you. You might not have this answer yet, but is there any engagement with groups that are not just looking at accessibility in regards to physical disabilities?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're just coming up with a communications plan at the moment. This is very much in the infancy stage, depending upon on what our plans look like. But there will be engagement across all of our network groups and our colleagues and our external, just to make sure that it is obviously not just physical disabilities, it's everything throughout the building. I know that we've had issues around sound as well within some of the rooms, and especially when you're in a forum like this and you've got lots of hybrid meetings going on. So there is considerations for everybody there.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Blackburn.
Yeah, thank you, Siobhan, and welcome to Calderdale. It is the centre of the universe. You'll love Calderdale, and the people who work within the council. Just going back to the town hall, really appreciate the update on that. I'd really love it. When I was married in 2016-17, we held a dinner party in the main Victoria Hall, and I'd love to see more commercialisation. I realise it's an impossible ask, but we would need probably better kitchen facilities if that was to actually continue. But actually, it's an amazing building. We could make quite a lot of money, I think, but it needs a lot of investment. So it's a big, massive ask. I expect, certainly with the financial pressures, I appreciate that's probably way down the line. But if I don't mention it and don't keep banging on about it, then I will be failing in my duties on my civic role. So thank you.
Just respond on that then. Yes, thank you. Commercialisation is obviously a massive thing. I have another role with Calderdale. I'm also a wedding registrar, so I'm very interested in it from a different perspective as well. But yeah, as we say, we just want to be able to utilise the town hall to its absolute full potential, the entire borough.
Okay, thank you. But so from what you're saying, Steve, any of this that we're hoping to see is as a bit down the line yet, because we're not going to get anywhere until you've done this survey of the whatever. So we're looking at next year probably before we have a better idea, would you say?
Yes, we're certainly looking into the first couple of months of next year, the next calendar year, before we can get the M&E surveys back and be able to digest that information. So it will be probably into kind of mid to the next year before we have some idea of the kind of plans that we're looking at in the phasing.
Yeah. Okay. And Alan.
Yeah, perhaps a final point on that, Chair. Just again to manage expectations. The idea is to come up with an overall plan for the future investment requirements for the town hall. The reality is we haven't got all the funds that we will require to deliver a comprehensive scheme. So just picking up Councillor Blackborough's point about, we do have ambition, but that ambition has to be managed against the resources we've got available. So there'll be certain things. Our key priorities, as Siobhan's outlined, are accessibility, and we do mean accessibility in its widest sense. But actually, interestingly, and not contradictory, we've also got to manage security and make sure we've got a secure building where it's safe for people to operate, and actually where we safeguard some well, literally the crown jewels of the council as well. So those are our, and kind of health and safety always runs through all the things that we do. So you've mentioned kitchen facilities, Councillor Blackborough. For the staff that operate there, you know, we haven't got adequate arrangements in place, let alone letting the space for external use. Actually, for getting our own house in order, there are certain basic requirements we need to get in place, which will be our starting point. We'll perhaps make up a first phase of what might be a number of phases of requirements over the years. And as I said, I just want to be very, very clear, because I don't want anyone to misunderstand. We don't have all of the investment that we're required to deliver a comprehensive scheme. But what we want to do is to understand what that might look like, and as and when the opportunity arises, we can continue to progress that. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you for administering that dose of cold water, which I would have done if you hadn't. So, okay. Yes, Councillor Blackborough again.
Yeah, no, thank you. I totally understand. You know, I fully accept that. But I'm just wondering, with it being a listed building, whether we can apply for heritage grants and the likes that actually may actually assist with some of these things. You know, to actually, you know, to bring it back into a building fit for purpose for the next century. So I think it's worth exploring. Well, so I appreciate the finances, and I get, you know, and I get you dampening my spirits right to the bottom. I'm very optimistic that we can achieve something.
Okay, thank you. So unless there's any more comments on that, if we can just note that report and move on to item 7, which is the review of the community management of assets, including community asset transfers. Is it going to be you, Steve?
It is, Councillor Dave,
yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. So just the first part of the paper just talks about the way that Calderdale interacts with its community, and has, you know, dealt with over the years quite to varying degrees, used our assets and other assets for the community to use and the community to manage. But a large part of that, of the overall community management of assets, is our community asset transfer policy. And it's a discretionary policy, but it's there to do certain things, but it has been there now for nearly 10 years, or 10 years exactly. So there are certain things that we need to do to that policy, but also to have a relook at the things that have happened over the last few years. And they're mentioned in the reports. We need to certainly look at the policy. The number of asset transfers has significantly increased in recent years without any addition in resource. Liaison with the community groups, which is absolutely key all the way through, but certainly it's as key afterwards. Once they've been transferred, we are currently doing it on a reactive basis, just because we don't have the resource in place to be able to work with, to monitor and audit and meet kind of regularly with the groups. And also one of the main issues is that there's no initial point, or there's no point initially in the process at the moment which effectively puts our foot on the ball and says, is this property that could this be suitable for community asset transfer? And what that, because we don't have that potentially leads to tensions between the community and the council's desire at times to have want to get the capital receipt to be able to fund other things. So to try and address those issues, we took a paper to Cabinet in June, and Cabinet approved that we do a post-project review of the current libraries and public halls that were ongoing, and also that will include other asset transfers that we've done over the recent past. That we introduce this additional stage in our current disposals policy, which looks at that whether a building is suitable or not for an asset transfer, as soon as we know that a building is coming available. A revenue budget of £55,000 for to provide two things. One, to fund a new post, which is effectively a person to look at the end-to-end process with the community group. So right from the very start, all the way through the process, and then to work with the various other services and teams to look at the monitoring and auditing going forward. But also a bit of a pot there to help groups as they're going through their business cases. If they need some specialist assistance, they can get a specialist assistance from the likes of locality, the VSI, and various different grants. But sometimes they just need that little bit of money as well to help them through to get their business cases to where they need to be. And then finally, a one-off revenue budget of £30,000 to commission a full and meaningful review. We've tried to have a look at this review over the last sort of 5 years, and we've never really got to it because of the resource situation. But we're looking at commissioning that out, and I think that's a really good thing that it is done externally, because I think sometimes we're just a little bit too close to the to the situation and how we deal with things. So just following on from the cabinet decision, officers from CAFM and policy and voluntary sector, Sharon Rogers' team have met and we're putting an action plan in place. So what we said about the post-project review is that will be part of the overall review of the policy. So we'll get somebody to have a chat with the various parties who have gone through the asset transfer to inform the new policy. The estates team is reviewing existing disposals policy anyway, as overall, because that's 2013. So that will come to cabinet in November 23. And also we're just pulling together at the moment a job description for that role. So we're hoping in the next few months we'll start to move quite a bit of that along. And just at the end of the paper there, I've just mentioned the latest position in respect of the current ongoing community asset transfers. So hopefully that gives a flavour of where we are trying to address the situation with regards to the asset transfers to make it a bit sort of a better process and more up to date. Okay, thank you. Councillor Bradburgh.
Thank you, Stephen. I really welcome this report. I think it's really important. Very much welcome community groups being able to have the ability to actually run some of these buildings. I think one thing that's possibly is lacking is managing their expectations and what we need as from a council. So being from a council perspective, looking after getting the best money from our buildings. Places like the Big House Civic Hall was going to be always very challenging for any group to take over, and I think an awful lot of officer time has been taken up in relation to supporting some of these groups. So there's a real fine balance between supporting the groups and actually looking at some of them and saying, actually, unfortunately, you don't really meet some of the criteria in relation to your business plan. So it's just some comments from an outside point of view. So whilst I supported the Big House Theatre Group, in reality, they were never going to have enough resources without another organisation coming on board. So I think it's really important that we're managing these groups' expectations as well at the same time. That it's not just we want this building to remain open. Yeah, of course we did. We wanted the Big House Civic Hall to remain open, but we knew in reality that was always going to be challenging without the rental income from the shops below. So there's a real balance, and there will be other buildings as we move along, I guess.
Okay, Steve, let's just come back there.
Yes, thanks, Councillor Bradburgh. I think hopefully by putting a process in initially where we actually look at a building across the board, so we have input from CAFM, from voluntary sector, it's mentioned in the paper, we'll pull on information from the voluntary sector as well to see what, and our neighbourhoods team, to see what the demand is. Is there a real demand here? So hopefully that will act as an initial filter to kind of, not necessarily to stop some of these going through, but to have a reality check at that time. But what we've actually did for the libraries and the public halls is we swapped things around a little bit, where we did this initial business case for 3 months, which hopefully shortened kind of the process. Now doesn't always work like that, because groups ask for extensions and things, you know, things tend to be given. But hopefully through the process and the learning and the feedback, we can start to address some of those issues. But thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yes, I think the reason it's so important to have the proper process and to try and get those interested people involved at an early stage is you can do it more calmly. Whereas what's I think been happening is that when buildings have been marked for disposal, and then when the sale starts to loom, groups suddenly say, oh, well, why didn't you ask us if we wanted it? And then there's really a sort of moral obligation on the council to at least explore it, but it's all being done when feelings are running high, and it's perhaps harder to have those conversations about, well, actually, really, do you have the capacity for this? Because then people will just feel like, oh, well, you'd already said you wanted to sell it, and now you're just trying to fob us off. So I think if we have this process where it's that work's done at an early stage, we should be able to take some of the heat out of that and try and avoid people, groups putting a lot of effort into something that isn't getting anywhere. And so I think Cabinet were really pleased to approve this report, because in an ideal world, I think the council would clearly have wished to keep some of these buildings and be able to run them themselves, but we're not in an ideal world, and in those circumstances we want the best possible process we can for those that can be to be run by community groups. And we know that things haven't always gone as well as we would have liked in recent years, and so we hope that this is going to go a long way towards solving a lot of those problems that have cropped up, and also the problem that Steve just mentioned towards the end of the report, where at the moment we can't really provide the ongoing liaison, which is again is dangerous, because groups are going to have groups that are run by volunteers are going to have periodic crises, and you need to try to be able to see those and head them off before they become impossible to manage. Okay, so unless there are any more comments on this, thank you very much, everybody, and we note that report and pass on to item 8, which is the Land and Property Asset Management Strategy 2018 to 24, which is again Alan, I believe. Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks, Chair. For those members who are less familiar with the service, although I think many of you have been involved with the service in the past, just a few words by way of introduction around this document. So the council has a 5-year property asset management strategy. We're actually in year 4 of 5 of that strategy, which sets out our overall aims and objectives for the management of property across the organisation, across the estate. And what we do to make sure we deliver against that strategy is we have an annual delivery plan that sets out the priorities for the financial year, and this report relates to or sets out the position as at Q4 for the last financial year. So that's the update that you've got. Against the targets that we set at the beginning of the financial year, then we RAG rate progress, and if there are any concerns, as you'll be familiar with, the significant concerns are rated red, and we set out what the mitigations might be. Things that are starting to turn a little bit, we'd rate amber. And we have, and again, some of you will have come across this, we also have, in addition to that, we have a blue, because sometimes we actually complete jobs and we can tick them off the list. So we have a blue rating for those activities that have been complete and have been delivered. So for the Q4 monitor, as you can see, generally positive picture. It is fair to say if we ever had a monitor that was all green, then you might say we're lacking a little bit of ambition, because there should be challenge always in the things that we're delivering, but clearly we wouldn't want everything to be red either. So actually the overall position is generally positive. We've already discussed some of the areas of activity earlier on the agenda, and others are on the future work programme. So there are 13 actions on the delivery plan, as you'll see. 9 of them have either been completed or remain on track. And what we often do is we skip over those because they're okay and they're not a concern. But if you'll indulge me, Chair, I just want to say a couple of sentences about the greens in particular and the blues. It shouldn't be underestimated, we've been through 2 major service restructures in the last 12 or 18 months. Those things are never easy. That affects people's roles. It creates a period of uncertainty. Yet against that backdrop of significant change across the services, we've continued to deliver significantly. So as I say, I wouldn't want to underestimate the impact of the change that people have been through. And that's been about positioning ourselves for the future requirements and future demands that we know we're going to have as a service. So things don't stand still. We continue to evolve, we continue to develop, we continue to look forward about future requirements. You know, 10 years ago when I first arrived, nobody talked about decarbonising the estate. And now it's up front and centre in terms of all that we do. So there are significant things that we now do that weren't even dreamt of when we first started on our journey. You've also heard about the asset review programme. Steve and Siobhan have talked about that, and we've kind of delved into that a little bit. Again, in a really good place. We know where we're going with that. We've made significant progress against phase 1 of the ARP. We've got clear direction in terms of future phases. We know we've got some challenges, and we'll always have challenges, but we're in a good spot. And it's important to mention our decarbonisation as well, and we'll have a fuller report about this at a future meeting. But incredible momentum, and we've come an awful long way with the schemes that we've delivered over the last 2.5 years. And again, we've got future plans that are evolving. We'll come back to that at a future meeting and say in a bit more detail. That's a really good news story. 3 actions on the delivery plan have been identified as amber. 2 of those relate to a key development for us in terms of positioning ourselves and kind of progressing and maturing, which is about making better use of the wealth of data that we have. Having existed for a number of years now and having implemented new maintenance management systems and IT systems that we have in place, we have a wealth of data at our disposal. And what we want to do is to use that intelligence to help to shape and inform our future direction and monitor progress. So there's a clear piece of work that we need to do there. We're resourcing up for that at the moment, and that'll be a key priority for us over the next phase. The 3rd amber action relates to our maintenance strategy. Again, it's well documented, the inflationary pressures around construction and energy costs that challenge, you know, every part of the industry. And of course, we've got quite a large, complex estate that continues to get older year by year. So a combination of challenges there. Piece of work that we're doing around our investment into the estate at the moment, and we'll be coming back to, I think, Q3, we've got a more detailed report that we'll come back to and explore that in a little bit more detail. And then finally, there's one action that's currently rated red, but that'll look a lot brighter next time, because that's the item that Steve's just talked about in terms of the investment that's now been agreed and the intentions to completely review and improve our approach to community management of assets. So that has been a challenge because we haven't had the resource available. That's now been made available, so we'll gear up and progress that. And as I say, that will move on quite quickly. I'm quite confident. So other than that, Chair, I'm happy to take any questions on any aspect of the monitor, and obviously we'll report next time on the Q1 monitor for this financial year.
Not seeing any hands up from anyone, so thank you for that. So to just go through those then, by the time we come next time, will that red be able to be amber for the asset review, do you think?
Well, Chair, dare I say, as we put the plan together and we've got the investment available, what I would expect, well, what we will do for Q1 for this year is we'll reset that whole timeline. We've got the investment, we know what needs to be done. We'll set a timeline for delivery against that. That'll be up to you to scrutinise next time, but I would expect on that basis, if we'd reset it, we'll be coming back with a green. Because we'll be saying we can deliver this within this time with the resources we've got available.
Yeah, because it'll amend. Yes, okay. And the 2.1B, which is the one that's gone from green to amber, isn't it? It's the one you're talking about where there's a report that's going to come to Cabinet and you're going to review.
Yeah. So that relates to the capital investment in the estate, Chair, where we know that some of the schemes have come back at a higher cost than was originally projected because of the nature of the industry at the moment. So we're doing a review at the moment, and we're in dialogue with each of the service directorates about current and future requirements, because as I say, we've got an ageing estate that continues to deteriorate. There are other issues that are emerging, so we need to have a complete fresh look at the requirements against the resources we've got available and bring forward a report that sets out those investment requirements and the ask moving forward.
Okay, so again, it's likely that will change, and again, like the asset management one, it will become a different timetable because you'll get the strategy and then there'll be a timetable for that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. Okay. And just finally on that, the decarbonisation, which is green, which is lovely, and it just refers to outstanding groundworks. Is that Spring Hall only, or by any chance, or is it all of them still, or more of them?
It's just Spring Hall, I think, isn't it, Elaine? Yeah.
Yeah, good. I thought it probably was.
Yeah.
And which is the one that's got the whaley problems? Is it the swimming pool in Todmorden?
It's it's Todd Sports.
Yeah. And so that's just forgive me, there's the two things there, isn't there? There's the heat pump and then there's the filter beds. Does this affect both of those or just the heat pump?
Elaine might come on in this one. I think it is just a heat pump in that case. I think the filtration works have been done, and I think the PV panels have been installed.
Yeah, they're certainly there.
So it is just in relation to the heat pump aspect. So there were three parts to that scheme. 2 of the 3 have been delivered, and it's a third that's impacted by the whaley. I think Elaine's going to come in.
Yeah, position is everything's working because we've put a temporary heat source in there, which is a gas facility that's in there. I think the wear leave is virtually resolved now, so hopefully that will be connected. There's just a problem at the moment with the size of the panel required to connect the electricity in that's being worked through, and that's mainly because of the availability within the market. So hopefully that will be getting resolved shortly. But I think the wear leave is now sorted, and we have got the supply coming through. It's just connecting it onto the building now, so hopefully we've got over that hurdle. So.
Sorry, when you say a problem in the market, you mean it's a supply chain issue?
Yes, yeah, that's right. It's a certain type of panel. Don't ask me, I'm not there, but you know, it's quite large and there aren't that many available. So we are trying to source one, and we've got several people trying to find one for us. Okay, lovely. Well, that's just self-interest on my part, wanting to find that out. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so there are no one else wants to raise anything on this. Okay. So we'll note that, thank you, which takes us on to the last item on the agenda, item 9, which is the provisional work programme, which is of course a new one because it's the amalgamated boards. I've got no comments on it. I don't know if anyone else has other. All I'd say is that yes, in time, probably next year, we'll be looking at some site visits, but nothing before then. No, I'm not seeing anybody's got any comments on that. So well done for that programme, Alan. Thank you. Okay, so in that case, we have reached the end of the agenda. Thank you, officers, for attending and providing us with that very useful information. And thank you, particularly Councillor Blackburn, for all your helpful questions. It is appreciated. Okay, so thank you and good afternoon, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Everyone, thank you.
Okay.